where my colleagues Isabella di Lenardo and Ilaria Manzini will provide an introduction, which will be followed by 2 parallel sessions involving members of our community presenting their work. Should be very interesting. One thing to quickly note, once we do go out to the breakout rooms, you'll be able to select the one you wish to follow on your own. The buttons are located on the bottom right bar in Zoom, right next to the reactions tab. So if you have any trouble, you can always message in the chat and we can help you then. But with that, I'd like to hand over to my colleagues Ilaria and Isabella.
Yeah, many thanks. Maybe Ilaria, can you share your screen? You already done it, maybe? I'm sorry.
Already done.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so good morning and welcome to the second Time Machine Day. It's a pleasure to have you here. Today we will explore the universe of the local time machines and we take a look at the new developments that we are doing. I'm Isabella di Lenardo. I'm a scientist at the Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne, Switzerland. I'm also coordinator for the local time machines segment in the European Time Machine project. And so with other colleagues, we have been working on this dream since 2016, as probably you know, for the European project. But this project, of course, started from an early idea born in 2013 from the Venice Time Machine project. That was the first one project in which we believe a lot. So I'm here with you and with Ilaria. Ilaria is the executive manager of the local time machines. And don't hesitate to contact us for any questions regarding your projects and eventually the possibility to be more active and collaborating with our network. Next, maybe, yes, thanks. So today we have different things to discuss. So first, we take a look to the growth of our consortium that is very incredible. In this year, we progress a lot. This is something of really amazing. And we see that with Ilaria. Then we try to explain what are the Time Machine Academies. We already concluded the two first Time Machine Academies. Then we take a look to the community because we have a lot of actions ongoing for the community. First, in terms of participation through some workshop, through some research group, and we see how you can actively collaborate in this process. And then we start with the parallel sessions. So today we have 2 parallel sessions. The first one focusing on the governance of the local time machine. So concretely, how you can build a local time machine in terms of consortium of many projects active locally. Which could be the good practice for build up this consortium in terms of governance, of course, but also in terms of relationships with the multi stakeholders. And then the other session based on 3D and 4D. This is only one of the aspects that we can touch with the time machine projects, local projects, but it's also very interesting as use case. Trying to see that there's an active community involved in this development for tourism and for municipalities and for research, but not only. So now we're back to the plenary. At the end of our presentation, we have also some poll. So please stay until the end, because we have some elements that needs your help at the end. And okay, so this is the program. Maybe we can start with, so for starting talk about the project, maybe I leave the floor to Ilaria for this first part of explanation.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Isabella, and welcome everyone, also from me, of course. It's a pleasure to see so many participants here today. And yeah, well, we wanted really, as Isabella mentioned in the presentation of the program, to show you a bit what have been the main developments in terms of infrastructure with relation to the local time machines in particular over the this past year. Now, those of you who have already joined time machine conferences in the past may be familiar with this particular visual representation of the different building blocks of the time machine and how they relate one to the other. And in particular with the fact that there are different sort of steps or phases in this infrastructural development that can actually go at a different pace. And we will start now with what we label the phase 1. You can see it highlighted in light orange here. And this is the phase that is really almost complete in the sense that is the phase that is was most urgent to implement in order to then be able to develop further parts of the time machine. This phase 1 is really focusing on the projects or LTM, local time machine projects, as the main building block. So you see them represented at the bottom of our whole infrastructure in a way. And the reason for this is that we were aware that there was already a considerable number of projects, either concluded or ongoing, that could really contribute to our joint ambition of developing the big data of the past for Europe. So projects that needed to be mapped, needed to be known, and that we know are either producing data by working with all sorts of data sources, of course, but could also contribute to other kind of elements to the time machine. And those in particular are the operators and apps, but Isabella will talk about this later. So one first step for us was to build a repository of these projects. So to be able to map them, but also to make them, to aggregate them and make them visible on a platform. And this is what the local time machines web space and projects environment is all about. So this was already built at the end of 2020. So it was launched at the conference actually last year. But since last year, we've seen, as Isabella was mentioning, really incredible growth in the number of projects. So when we started last year, we had less than 20 projects registered on the platform. And now we're happy to share with you that we have reached this number of 108 projects with, as you see, a very good geographic distribution as well. And not only this, but of course, as you know, these projects, most of them at least, are really producing either data or some sort of content related to places, so to particular locations. And the sort of network of projects that are located or producing data on a particular place, so either municipality or a larger area, are called local time machines. And we see these aggregations of projects today have reached a number of 68. So this is again a very nice number for us to see, but it's not just about the sheer number, of course. You see on this map, which this is just a screenshot from our local time machine map on the website. As you can see, the dots have different sizes. And the size just reflects the number of projects that are active on a particular city or place in general. And so you see that, of course, some of these locations, some of these cities have a higher number of projects, but of course, that's not the only point or the only important point for us. What we're looking forward to is also a higher integration and coordination among these projects. So this is why we're so happy that one of the parallel sessions that we will have later today will be focusing on organizational aspects or governance aspects of local time machines. So how to make sure that you build a coherent consortium and you create coordination among the projects in your own location. So these are all very nice developments of which we can be happy and proud. And in particular here, we just wanted to show you some of the latest additions to our platform, because of course, this is also a way for us to welcome some new members and new projects so welcome on board if you're here, as I think. And it also helps to show a bit how how diverse the ecosystem of local time machine projects is. So for instance, we have projects such as Thanatos, which is a database of medieval burials in Austria for the moment, and later to grow to other areas as well. And then similarly, the AZ ad infinitum project, which is a database mapping all Azulejo tiles in Portugal, not just in terms of location, but also pattern designs, etc. So these are two examples of databases, but on very different source material and very different geographic areas. But then we have also projects with the more infrastructural nature, and this is the case of the Daria Lab, which was briefly mentioned by our Polish ambassador just yesterday in the first block of our conference. And then on the bottom right, you can see this website, which is collecting all sorts of data and reconstructions of a number of cultural heritage landmarks in the city of Izmir in Turkey. So just as you can see, a great diversity in terms of geographies, but also in terms of really content of the projects that we have. So we thought that we wanted to show you some facts and figures to get to know these LTM projects a bit better. Now, of course, it's not possible to present about all of them. That's what the platform is for. And we invite you to, of course, to visit it regularly because of the new projects that are being registered day by day. But we wanted to offer you a sort of overview. What we have carried out as the local time machine coordination team is a sort of mapping and a system of labeling and giving a bit of a structure to the projects that we have to understand a bit better what are the focus areas of these projects, what are their goals, what particular sort of data they work with, etc., etc. So if we look at just sort of that figure on the left of your screen, in terms of focus areas and goals, we see that almost half of the local time machine projects are about a reconstruction of the past of some sort. So this could be either in the form, for instance, of 3D, 4D reconstructions, and that's the case of the Urban History 4D project, for instance, or it could be about socio-historical reconstructions, so more narrative ones, etc., etc. But then the remaining half of projects has also, or at least some of these projects have also a component that is about the development of tools or solutions interfaces of some sort. Now, one example here in this direction is the Virtual Interiors project from the Amsterdam Time Machine. Of course, is a project that is producing data, but is also working at a sort of methodological question of how to build interfaces that can show, in this particular case, where objects were placed in the interiors of Dutch houses, but also show the sort of level of certainty or uncertainty in relation to the placement of these objects in the interior space. So this is an example of a project that is not just about reconstructions or data, but is also about interface development. Then, of course, we have projects, most of those by patrimonial institutions, that are really about the digitization and online sharing of data from their collection. But we also have, such as, for example, the one from the Biblioteca Hertziana here, but we also have some projects that are really acting as aggregators of data already put online by other institutions, such as Old Maps Online, for instance. Well, this chart is probably self-explanatory, but we just wanted to show a bit what's the sort of data sources that projects work with. Of course, there's a lot of variety, as you can see, some that some kind of data such as photos or maps, for instance, have a larger share than others, but we can definitely see there is all sorts of projects in our ecosystem from this point of view. We also thought you'd like to hear a bit more about what's the governance of projects. So in terms of who are the lead partners or the organizers, initiators of these projects. And here we see that the academic sector, so universities or research institutions of some sort, are the lead partners for more than half of the projects on our platform, but we also have really a good number of projects that are initiated by patrimonial institutions, and last but not least also by the private sector, so private companies. And in terms of chronological span, here you can see again a lot of diversity in the sense that some projects are really in there for the longue durée, so for, on very long chronological spans. Others are much more punctual in time, but you can also see that really the vast majority of projects are focusing on the medieval to modern times. So what to do with all these amazing projects that we now have on our platform? Well, of course, one of the first actions that we wanted to take was to ensure that these projects were not just mapped and made visible on our website, but also they were made accessible. They were sort of showcased to a larger community. So one of the things we did this year was a social media campaign, thanks to, of course, our communications team, in which we presented at regular intervals one local time machine project with a particular post. So it was really about sharing, especially, of course, visual materials, and then redirecting our online audience to the websites of the projects. And we see that there is interest for this in the local time machines community, as well as in our online audience. So we have resumed this, and we're actually building on this campaign before the summer break. We're now looking into expanding it even more with more content. And then the second point for us, what we realized is that with the registration form that we had in place until now, until very recently, the level of detail of information that we could collect on projects was already, of course, important, but not as high as it could have been. So what we have decided to do is to actually update our registration form in order to make it possible to collect considerably more detailed information about the project. So we're happy to launch this new registration form today, and we will show it just briefly to you. Sorry if sorry, it wasn't working. Okay. So as you can see, compared to the previous version of the registration form, for those of you who've already registered a project, you can see that now we have actually multiple tabs, each of them collecting data about a particular aspect. So now we are actually able to collect information, for instance, about the organizational structure of the project in order to understand how big and complex it is. Then we collect all sorts of information about the digitization component. Is the project digitizing? What sort of data? And what's the overall digitization volume, etc., etc. Is the project actually producing data that can be shared? It's already possible to upload your data sets, of course, in case those are open data. But if it is producing also, for instance, some sort of software code or tool, it's possible as well to put a link to the code repository, to your GitHub or whatever. So we really are collecting all sorts of information there. And we do invite you warmly to, even if you've already registered your local time machine project perhaps 1 year ago, to go in your inbox and recover the automated email you have received at the time of the registration, and to edit the page of your project by adding all this information. And this is really important, not just, of course, for a time machine to know more about the content of your projects, but also in order to better shape the offer that we can provide you with. And about this offer, I'd like to give the floor back to Isabella to present a bit about the Time Machine Academies, which are another one of the developments introduced this year.
Thanks, Ilaria. So as Ilaria mentioned, it's important to have this information fact because it allows you to better profile time machine activities to help you in the concept and progress of projects. So there's an important need for us for understanding more what you're doing, how we can concretely contribute for help you. So this is important. Alongside the project web space that Ilaria illustrated, so we are developing this year, in fact, the Time Machine Academies activities. This is a completely open activity, so it's free, and it's a learning space because thanks to your projects, you actually produce the elements that make up the components of the time machine. So the idea is to present these components as a sort of toolbox for the community in which you can find the elements for developing new projects or solve some technical issues in your ongoing research. So it's of course open to the research community that we have seen that it's very big and interesting in terms of competencies of each other. But it's also open to the GLAM, what we can call the GLAM consortium. So the world of the archives, of the libraries, of course, gallery and museums, because it could be useful for you in terms of curatorship to have access to this toolbox, to these tools that are developing from by the research world. So there's an important theoretical aspect because in the Time Machine Academies, we talk about theory, of course, but also we develop the hands-on workshop in which you can try open codes, generic approaches, tools, software solutions, and apply them for the entire pipeline of digitization. So from the start, when documents are digitized, to the end, when data are extracted. This is also, so our idea is also to open this space of learning to the also to the companies, for example, because there's a lot of components that are already developed by companies. For example, in the world of cartography for realigning historical maps, for extracting features, for annotating them, and so on. So this could be a good opportunity also for the private sector to illustrate concretely what are the tools already on the table and how they can potentially collaborate with other patrimonial institutions and the research world. So, of course, the goals of these time machine academies for now are bridge the gap between institutions and technology, because we know very well that these two worlds are always quite separated. Try to highlight the excellence, but not only even the state of the art of some solutions that are already done and accessible for institutions and for researchers, and then create a community of discussion about some specific needs or some specific development for the digitization. Maybe next. Thanks. So this year we had 2 time machine academies. The first one deployed an automatic and accessible segmentation tool. We just give an idea and explain how we can apply this tool called DH segment, developed by the Digital Humanities Laboratory at the École Polytechnique Fédérale in Lausanne, Switzerland. It's a tool for segmenting documents, historical documents, and that you can apply it to large collections of digitized documents, and that can be useful for producing semantic extraction of the layout of the documents. And it's very useful in case of processing of large collections of photos, for example, but also full text documents with ornaments or with margins, and also very useful in case of cartography. So we have to process maps for extracting features and elements, graphic elements from these very specific type of corpuses. This is it was just an example, but we know that there's a lot of potentially other type of segmenting tools. And of course, if you are interested in presenting them and participating in these academies, you are feel free to contact us. It could be very, very useful for us and for the community in general. Then in the second time machine, we approach the standard IIIF thanks to Glenn Robson in the first session who explained how to get started. So what is the general concept of the IIIF standard, how you can setting up IIIF system, and what they are doing in the IIIF community. And in the second session, we take a look to a use case, a concrete use case of application of the IIIF standards, the example of the National Library of France, so the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. Very interesting because it's a sort of whole pipeline in which we have the concept of a standard, and then we have the implementation in a patrimonial institution. And then in the third session, we have potentially the possibility to develop an application practice, so a tool for infrastructure that it's a sort of IIIF server that can not only be conceived as a store space, but it's also a server capable to process through different apps your documents, because it's integrating different tools in terms of extraction, for extracting information, for example, segmenting historical documents, but also for segmenting lines in historical documents, and potentially for reading these documents through the OCR or HTR processes. So it's interesting to see that from the concept to the concrete realization, you can follow all this pipeline, and then if you are, for example, in patrimonial institution, you can also access to this type of approaches, to this type of vision in terms of sharing documents and sharing knowledge. If we take a look to the development, so Ilaria explained the first part, the core of our time machine. It's of course the project. The projects, of course, start from the data sources. So there's a lot of sources that are processed through different projects with different approaches. And we developed the project repository, as Ilaria mentioned, in which you store more or less the information about your project ongoing. The second part of the infrastructure concerns specific tools or codes that could be served for specific needs, because it's true that through the project we develop data, of course, but we can also develop codes for extracting data, and we can also develop apps, for example, for helping in the process of extraction. The tools can be stored also in own repository called code library, and the apps at the same time in something that could be useful for developing this sort of 4D map of the past, European, but not only scale. Apps, for example, are more structured interfaces like tools for annotating historical documents or API. When we talk about codes, for example, we talk about what I presented just before. So, for example, segmenting codes, or also codes for extracting lines in the full text documents and so on. So you already, if we go to the next one, so you already maybe you are already active in this development of codes, and probably you already share your code in Github, for example. This is very useful for the community, because the idea of Time Machine is to have an open and free space in which you can share these codes, so not only in GitHub, but also in the Time Machine GitHub space, in which you can, if you are an institution or a researcher, you can find codes already developed in the context of LTM projects. And if you are a researcher, you can upload these codes and open them to the community. The apps, of course, are a strong integration with local time machine projects, and can be very useful to have this learning space through the Time Machine Academies, in which we explain concretely how you can apply these apps to your project, and how you can benefit from them. Maybe, yes, just one last question about the RFC, so the request for comments. So what they are. So what you have seen correspond to the first phase of development, the fact that we have developed this repository of project. We are developing now this part concerning the code library and the store for the apps for developing the 4D maps. And there's a sort of slow track development in the Time Machine that correspond to the development of the request for comments components. Because when you extract data from your project, this data, of course, follows some specific standards, some specific needs, adapted, very fit to your project. So what we have to do, we have to transform, or try to transform, this standard and these models that you already produce in something more structured and share with the community to the request for comments. And then when some specific aspects developed by the discussion in the request for comments is quite mature, we can translate all this knowledge in terms of data in the common and the big data graph of the time machine. So the requests for comments are a collaborative space in which you are already invited to contribute. Is completely open. They can focus different aspects of your research, different aspects of the digital world, of course, from the documents to the 3D, from the text to the artistry elements. So they can cover a very, very large and open ground in which different fields are concerned. Maybe I leave the floor to Daniel Keller for presenting this, how you can concretely contribute in this RFC process.
Yes, so hello everyone. I just want to use a few spare minutes to tell you about the RFC process more in detail, and also to tell you where we are currently in that process and what will happen in the near future and how you can contribute. So as Isabella already said, the RFCs, requests for comments, are a method that we want to apply or are applying to develop the various parts of the time machine infrastructure, because as you have already seen, we have many parts that need guidelines, parts that need data models, parts that need descriptions for infrastructure, and so on. At the same time, through the local time machine process and through our members and through other contacts to various expert communities, we have a broad range of experts in various scientific domains as part of our community, whose knowledge we want to, and we of course we need to apply to create all these different parts of the infrastructure, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And of course we also see that the time machine can only be successful if it applies best practices already by use and already developed in the various fields of cultural heritage, digital humanities, information sciences, and so on. So we try to create a process, and we are still in an experimental phase that more concretely specifies this process, where we want to give the community the possibility to contribute to specific topics in a more atomic way. So small questions that need concrete answers. So if you are part of the time machine, you have already heard about that for some time. So we have, during our CSA project phase, developed a broad outline of possible topics that we see the need to be solved. We call that the RFC tree. That's really like a tree structure that outlines various parts of infrastructure. And these various parts start with the infrastructure itself, the process on how to create this kind of community feedback and so on. And we decided to realize all that in the form of a more or less like a source code repository. We have decided to host it on Github. You can see the link on our website on the right top part of the page, or in the RFCs section. We did that because we see this request for comments and these actual documents describing the infrastructure as a growing yeah, it's a growing body of documents where the community can contribute, and we want to track this contribution. We want to make clear who contributed which part, and in the end, we want all of these requests for comments to be individual documents that can be shared, that can be discussed, that can also be referred to at a later stage. And we achieved that by having it in this GitHub repository. Yeah, thank you, Ilaria. So you just see two screenshots on the left, on the right side of this slide. The left side is a screenshot from this actual GitHub repository. That's basically a remote storage for files where changes to these files are tracked. So you can see who made what change at what time. So we have these text documents that are created by these various actors. And on the bottom of the page, you see, for instance, that we have one RFC currently in preparation on cadastral maps, cadastre processing. That's the first experiment that we do where we contribute or work together with scientists that work in this actual field to create a text on guidelines and best practices that we want to apply on importing that kind of data in the time machine data graph, basically. And we also have a number of already published RFCs that are basically about the structure of this workflow and on topic of the local time machines. So you can see that the process that led us to the creation of the local time machine portal, more or less. And we are also publishing these documents in a more or less regular or irregular basis. So we have currently just published the first RFC book, as we call it. That's a PDF document containing all the currently available released RFCs and the released or are currently in process drafts. You can also access these in the releases section of the GitHub repository. And what we intend to do in the near future is launch more of these draft RFCs to various topics as soon as we finish these current experiments where we try to test the workflow that we are developing right now. And then we will ask you for your feedback, your contributions to these actual RFCs to find out whether or not they find best practices valuable, or they have any, or you have any comments to whether or not that matches the workflow that is used in your project, for instance. So yeah, feel free to already browse the repository, give us some feedback on the process and the RFCs so far, but especially stay tuned for more news on that topic in the near future. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. We are running a bit later, but we wanted to make sure that there was a small moment for questions here, because I've seen some popping in the chat. And yeah, and I was wondering if there's any question that needs to be addressed right now before we move to the poll phase and then to the parallel sessions. So may I ask those who posted a question that has not yet been answered to ask it out loud, please? Okay, let me check in the chat. Well, maybe everything has been addressed. Is there any extra question at the moment, or can we proceed with our presentation, actually with the polling? Okay, I don't see any hands being raised. So yeah, we'll just proceed then. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so what we wanted to do now, before we go into the parallel sessions in a few minutes, what we wanted to do is to really focus on the community aspect here. Of course, this is the title of the session as well, right? Technology and the time machine community, not necessarily in order of importance. So something that we hope has been made clear by our presentation is that the local time machines community at the moment is already a very large community with a lot of diversity in it. There's definitely expertise on different matters, data sources, pipelines, etc. And there's also a lot of overlaps and rooms for complementarity. So in order to make sure that what is developed, for instance, by a project in Switzerland can actually be transferred in the form of knowledge or experiences or good practices to other projects across Europe, we need to make sure that this knowledge is made available, is made known, first of all, and then is made available for exchange. And of course, Time Machine can act in this sense as a facilitator of these exchanges, as an aggregator of demands, so of needs from projects, but also of forms of expertise that are already in the community and that can be shared. Indeed, but we definitely need your input in order to make this possible. So we need to get to know the projects better. Again, that's why the new form is so important. But also we want to help and facilitate the circulation of this knowledge by organizing moments in which, moments really for discussion. Within the community. One example, of course, in point being the parallel sessions that have been organized by different LTM projects in the second half of this session. These are sort of co-organized and initiated by projects based on thematic approaches. So questions that were emerging from the community itself. So a very bottom-up approach in that sense. And but these do not need to be limited to the parallel sessions. We could actually foresee organizing workshops throughout the year in which creating discussion moments throughout the year, for instance, for members or projects that work on similar topics with similar kind of sources that are facing the same problems, etc., etc. This, of course, could on one side contribute to the RFC writing process, as Daniel has already explained, but it could also be in a less, let's say, it could also produce less formalized documents or working documents that we could then circulate within the community in the form of recommendations or experiences or good practices. So in order to start this, we have prepared for you a poll. It is very easy to join. You can do it in two ways. If you have a phone with you, that's maybe the easiest. You can just scan the QR code that you see on the right of the screen, and you get immediate access to this poll. Otherwise, if you want to stay on your laptop, you can just type slido.com on your browser, and you have to add this number. I believe that one of my colleagues is pasting it in the chat now. So it's also easier for you to join. And then we have basically 4 questions for you, 2 being on the forms of expertise that you believe you or your project or your institution could bring to the Time Machine community, and the other 2 being on the forms of support that you would like to receive. And then we will play a bit matchmaking and see how this can be formalized into actual workshops and working groups. So I'll start with the first question. And we would like to ask you, basically, these are closed questions. This is a list of possible responses. And the question is, what forms of expertise or availability you could offer to the Time Machine community or to the LTM community in particular? Maybe you have already developed software. Maybe you have experience in creating or joining consortia. Maybe you are a patrimonial institution that could share data, etc., etc. So I'll leave just 1 minute for you to respond. Okay. Okay. Of course, just quickly, if you have not noticed, in order to submit your answer, you need to click on submit at the end of the question. Okay. Thank you for the, I see some more questions popping in, some answers popping in. Okay, but I would like to move to the next question, and this is just about trying to make it a bit more concrete. This is an open-ended question, and it's just about explaining a bit better what is the sort of expertise or offer that you could put on the plate in this direction of exchanging knowledge or practices or experiences. I've just written down a couple of examples. For instance, we developed a software named XYZ, which serves this purpose, and we could, for instance, host an academy on it. We would love to teach others how to use it. Or we have experience with community-based projects. We know how to do crowdsourcing or to work with citizen science, etc., etc. And please feel free to type in some ideas that don't need to be refined. It's just a brainstorming at this moment. Thank you. Thank you. Assassin's Creed came up yesterday as well, so. Thank you. This is all very useful. Okay, we'll move on to the last two questions now. There will be time for giving more input even offline, so to speak, so not live. So don't worry if you didn't manage to. This question is more about the forms of support. So what would you like to receive? What do you feel is missing in your project or within your institution at the moment? And how could Time Machine or the Time Machine community help in this? And if you clicked on other, there will be chances to explain what other is. Okay. And now, again, an open-ended question. So can you please explain a bit better what is the kind of support you would be looking for? For instance, training on our software to solve a particular problem we are facing, or advice on project management, or how to build a consortium. If that's your question, please pick room 2 later on when we go into the breakout rooms for the parallel sessions. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. So I think we can stop here for the moment. And we will collect all of these and aggregate, see if there's ways to aggregate your demands or your offers, and basically we'll invite you to then register for working groups on these issues and these particular issues. I'll just stop sharing my screen at the moment. Thank you so much, everyone. Excellent. Because well, okay. Because before we go into the parallel sessions, as I was mentioning, we have one last moment of presentation. Just a few minutes. Okay. Sorry, I'll just need to share my screen again. Okay. So we also wanted to share with you this information, this news that actually the time machine, local time machines in particular, have also become a topic for research, in particular by a PhD student in the program in heritage studies at the Brandenburg University of Technology. The name of the PhD student is Zane Pudnina. So we would like to give her the floor for a few minutes just to introduce her research and to tell you a bit more about how she intends to collect data for her research. Please, Zane.
Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here. Good morning, everyone. Thanks to Isabella and Ilaria for staying in touch with me for almost a year now, actually, and planning and squeezing me in this morning. Very excited and a little bit nervous to be here. But yeah, quickly going over, I would sketch out my guiding research questions, what it is that I'm looking at in the framework of the local time machine project, research project that I have here, then say a couple of words of the main reason that I'm squeezed in here today, which is namely a survey that I'm planning to do in order to answer my research questions, and then saying 4 words about what's the planned outcome of my research project, what it is that I would like to achieve. Next, please. Yes, research questions. As the title actually was trying to hint at, I'm looking at, yeah, I learned about the time machine organization in 2019. I was swept by the idea, and now I'm looking at what I think we all agree are the cornerstones of the time machine organization, namely the local time machines. And I was thinking in already 2019, 2020 yeah, doing a kind of a practical overview in the first part of my research project to really have a very good grounding and examples and understanding of what's happening in the network thus far. I think then there were only 22 projects actually part of it, and now it's 108, as Ilaria said yesterday. And there's some synergies also I see with the time machine office as well, which is actually really lovely. But yeah, I'd like to get a sense of an overview of what's happening in the project network on the kind of a bigger scale, and then on the smaller scale on the individual local time machine project, on the objectives and histories and who used and planned impacts thus far, to then really go to, next please, into the core of what would be my research project, namely the more conceptual side, as I'm coming from heritage studies and a very deep humanities background. I'd be looking at what has been and what is digital cultural heritage now, as this is the term that's being used in the time machine organization to describe what's happening here to larger public. And I'd be looking at how is this digital cultural heritage practiced within the local time machine project network, to then kind of go into my core research question, which is, okay, how does this digital cultural heritage differ from previous heritage memory construction modes, and what are the implications thereof? I'm not going into more conceptual and methodological sides of this just now, but if you have questions, please do reach out. Next, please. In order to answer the 4th question, which is the kind of core, I guess, of my research, is I'd be using this traveling memories concept coined by Professor Dr. Astrid Erl in 2011, where she's defining 5 dimensions in which memories can travel, which I find fascinating, namely carriers, the people who tell a memory, the media, the tools that are used to tell a memory, the contents, namely the stories which are told within a memory, the practices of how this memory can be accessed and experienced, and the forms, so what's possible in the memories. And then all of your fantastic local time machine projects, there are all of these 5 dimensions, and they're also coming mostly from, as far as I've done my research, analog sources, and then they're traveling into the digital realm. Next, please. To then move on to the survey. Yeah, it should not take you more than 8 to 10 minutes to fill out. Section 1 would be going into a little bit general aspects of the local time machine projects that I thought would be crucial that I ask you directly after all. Section 2 and Section 3 would be concerning the traveling memories of these projects. In Section 2, I'd be asking about the 5 dimensions of the analog source heritage that you're using. And then in Section 3, I'd be asking you about the 5 dimensions of the local time machine projects in the digital. And in Section 4, I'd be kindly asking if you would be willing to have a longer chat with me about the traveling memories of your projects at a later point in the semi-structured interview kind of setting at a later point in time. And next, please. And yeah, the planned outcome, generally, my aim would be to contribute to the critical theory for digital cultural heritage, kind of mapping what's been going on in this wonderful endeavor thus far. Ambitious, but I would be trying to come up with situated knowledge, working definition of what is digital cultural heritage within the network, and a map of the largely analog heritage memory sources into the digital environments, and then an analysis thereof. Next, please. And here are the link. Here's the link to the survey and the QR to the survey that I would be kindly asking you, and we'd be very thankful about if you could fill it out after, of course, today's meeting. And Ilaria has kindly said that she would send out the information to access it at a later point in time. Next, please. There should be one more. Yes. The last 3 thank yous for your wonderful projects that I've gone through all of them. I wish the best of luck to them. And thank you for listening to me. And thank you, hopefully, for filling out the survey. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Zanne. So as Zanne mentioned, we will circulate this link and the QR code via email for you to fill in the survey later. And we think this is a great opportunity actually for local time machines to also become the object actually of research. So thank you, Zanne. And I guess some of you at least will get to talk with her a bit more in the coming months. So we are unfortunately running a little bit late, a few minutes late, but so without further ado, we would like to invite you to join one of the parallel sessions that some of the projects have organized. Isabella has already introduced them, so I will just repeat the titles. If you are more interested or more curious about the 3D, 4D as a research to bridge history and the future within the urban space, you can join breakout room 1. You will see the possibility popping up on your screen right now. While if you're more interested in how to build a local time machine, so the governance of a local time machine, please join breakout room number 2. Don't worry, both will be recorded, so you will be able to watch later the other session that you could not join at the moment. And we will see you here at the end just for a few goodbyes and a message at the next steps. So is everyone back here from the room 1 as well?
Yeah.
Yes?
For me, yes.
Yeah, but Antonello, you were with us in room 2 though. I saw you there. So I was wondering if the 3D, 4D room people are also back with us.
They should be, because
Welcome.
Oh, okay. Hi, Isabella. Welcome back.
Hey. But we are still in progress on the other side, on the other section.
I was wondering, perhaps we could just, if you don't mind, we could just invite everyone back here for the takeaway sort of messages, because in the other room, the discussion is closed now, and then you can continue.
Okay, so
yes,
because it's not finished yet, so, and we have someone talking.
Oh, okay.
No, because I see this alert message, but I'm not sure to have understood correctly.
Yeah, so we would like to close the breakout room, also the other one, also the one where you are moderating, and for everyone to come back here so we can have. Yeah, but I think everyone is here now, because I see again 70 participants. Okay, so we'll just take a couple of minutes to for sort of a general wrap up, and then if you'd like to continue the discussion on the 3D, 4D, we can just let the meeting run, and basically we can continue it here without going back to the breakout room. Does it make sense for everyone?
Yeah, I think
Perfect.
that we can do this. Maybe not planning an half hour, but at least 15 minutes.
10 more minutes, yeah, sure.
Yeah, for us. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'd just like to take a couple of minutes for those of you who maybe really have another commitment at 11. And these are some sort of closing remarks from our side. Well, of course, a big thank you to everyone, to our speakers, to you all in the audience for joining. And we have a few sort of takeaway messages from this session. What next, basically? Of course, we think most of you in this audience have already registered your project or projects as local time machine projects on our platform. If you have not yet done so, please do it as soon as possible at your earliest convenience. This is the link. I think it will be posted in the chat as well, but otherwise you can just go on our website and click on building a local time machine and register your project. Not just that, but if you have registered your project already in the past, please remember we have this new registration form online now, and we would really, really like to know more about your projects in more detail. And because it will really be important to shape our offer to you, to your project, to you as a member in the coming months. So please go there and edit your projects page with more information. Then, of course, this is a message that we like to repeat as much as possible. If you are aware of other projects that could be registered, that you think fall within the scope of Time Machine in your own location or not, please invite them to register, or just let us know about them, and we will follow up and reach out to them. We want to make sure we are growing, and that's really not just about the numbers, it's also really about the how interconnected we manage to become. Then, of course, if you think you have expertise to bring into the RFC's writing process, there's a dedicated section on our website in which you can express your interest, and Daniel explained a bit how the process will be in the future. Then we are very glad that, again, local time machines are becoming a topic for research, and in that sense, thanks again to Zanne Putnina for her presentation. You will receive an email from me later today with a link to take her survey, and this would really help her, but of course also us learn more about ourselves. Last but not least, you have taken this poll today, in which you have expressed your sort of availabilities in terms of expertise, but also your needs in terms of where do you perceive that Time Machine could help, the Time Machine community could help your project. Now we would like to invite you to do this, if you don't mind, right away. Again, there's a very simple way to do it, to take this super quick survey, and it's through your phone by scanning the QR code, and otherwise The link is being posted in the chat, I believe. It's really just a very simple form in which you can either select a topic area or add one of your own if you haven't done so before. And just express your interest in joining either a workshop or a working group. We will aggregate all of these results, and we will simply only use this data to make sure that we are connecting the right people to be working on these different topics. And again, thank you so much for joining and contributing to this session. We are slightly over time, sorry for this. But for those of you who really needed to leave at 11, please feel free. And otherwise, I will personally really gladly stay here and hear more about the 3D, 4D as a way to bridge the past and the future.
Yeah, maybe we can take until 11:30 or 20, something like this. Just one more from my side also. Thank you all of you for your support, your participation, which is truly incredible. We are a large community, but we still have to grow, improve, and we must do it together for the future of our common heritage that it's huge. A warm greeting to all of you, wherever you are. Also a special greeting to Jim and Timlin from Colorado who are following us. In Colorado is 2 a.m. So many thanks for this support from this distance. And thanks. So we can stay here if I
yeah.
Okay, if I understood correctly. And maybe we can retake the discussion about the 3D and the 4D until 20 or 30, something like this, following your availability, of course. Thank you. Okay, maybe so if I retake the fil rouge of the discussion about the 3D and 4D, we are talking just about the possibility of the collaboration with public actors in this specific development. And then what are the technical issues and open technical aspects that are still unsolved for, or not only, and maybe policies as we discussed, that are not already solved, we can say, about from this perspective of 3D and 4D models. Maybe Valerie, do you want to retake the lead of the discussion? Then we do this round of table.
Thank you, Isabella. I just wanted to come back on the discussion we had about the availability of 3D data. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think it's also on the ends of government policies. For example, if we consider France, we have a lot of 3D mobile. Okay, the quality is not good because it is available at the scale of the country, but we have access to very huge data set of 3D model. And the news in France is that in 3 years, in 2025, we will have at our disposal a very high resolution coverage of the French with high level, high resolution LiDAR, laser informed 3D-point clouds. So maybe I'm optimistic, but I think with the spatial turn and things like that, we will have a very large data set of mapping of our territories. So it's in the hands of government, of course, but it goes like that, at least for France.
Okay, yes, there's a challenge in terms of ownership, of course. Mario, please.
I think there is no problem to get information in 3D of the existence situation. Also not for I say 10 or 20 years ago, but the problem is to get information about the formal demolished situation in 3D. So you have to co-create it when you don't have the money to do it on a professional way. but also for future. The problem is, as I told a few minutes ago, to convince architects and urban planners to put their new insights, new dreams of the future in 3D and integrate it in a 3D city model. So you cannot scan the future, you have to model it. And to with co-design, I hope we can convince the people, the citizens, to promote the professionals to collaborate also their 3D drawings for the future.
Yeah, Georgios.
Thank you. Yeah, and as I was saying, I think it's important for us to be able to distinguish the several parallel processes that lie behind this effort, and to have, like, of course, one discussion about all the technical aspects regarding data conversion, interoperability, curation, storage, etc., and access, with the GDPR involved, of course. But on the other hand, the aspect of visualization is highly relevant and important for future sustainability. And because this was part of the discussion, that the initial question, because we cannot afford, like, investing time in a product that nobody but the specialists would actually be able to use it. So in this regard, the co-development of different interfaces that would be using the same federated data sets is highly important, because we need to address the needs and the capacities of the individual groups of stakeholders or user groups that we address this. So if we're talking about the public authorities, should be the interface probably would have to be different to architects and professionals and specialists, to archaeologists and architecture historians, and so on, so for all the lay people and the public, if we want to just entice them to be interested in contributing through crowdsourcing processes. So all these different groups would require some kind of different layout of the interface, and this we experience every day, and I'm sure most of the people here would agree with me, at least those who are active in academia, that we see that people, non-experts, they don't really care about the particularities of the realism of the visualization, how photorealistic the visualization is. Okay, so investing most of the resources in developing a highly photorealistic representation that would run online, but would not make any real difference to our targeted audience, wouldn't make any sense, wouldn't be very efficient use of the resources.
Georgios, I totally agree with you. Target groups and identifying the target groups is of crucial importance. So differentiating between the different visitors of what we visualize.
Yeah, this is interesting, because we can have this idea of differentiating data into layers, right? And web applications according to uses and therefore policies. This is the very important concept that we have to understand. And then probably also deciding which layer is the most promising for developing funding, for example, funding efforts, because of course there's someone interested more in archaeology, but it cannot have financing by this way, because it's quite complicated, and maybe developing the layers on the present and for the future planning. This could be more promising for looking for funding. So this is interesting, this idea that we can have a sort of multi-layer approaches in which we have the total. We have the whole city, the whole territories, but we can also segment this in problems and in the applications and different data knowledge layers. For come back quickly to the starting point of our discussion concerning the ownership of data. This is, I think, that it's a crucial point, because just for give you a sort of overview, the law permitting acquisition, sharing, and display is not unified at European level. So there's no today a common rule for manage this. And there's some areas in which this is not allowed. Even the only acquisition, take, for example, Venice. Okay, we cannot do a LiDAR scan or a capture by drones, or also a sort of photogrammetric campaign more in depth, because it's not allowed for specific rule concerning only the city of Venice, for example. This is interesting because open the fact that maybe true good practices, like through a good example of research, we can try also to contribute to define good policies in an European perspective, and not only for some use case available for some use case particularly. Take just to a quick reminder to the fact that I don't know how many people know about the history of Google Earth, but if it wasn't for Al Gore making this access public, we wouldn't have the representation that we have now. This is interesting because it's a political decision about open this type of data and produce some of common share of common share web application, which we can bring all this data, all these elements, and work on this connection about all these 3D and 4D models that for now, fortunately, are segmented, fragmented, separated, and so on. Maybe something more with collaboration with museums and citizens. Do you have, because I see the example of Toine and Simon, that so they worked a lot with the museum for not really professionalism application for spreading sort of escape game access to the data. There's someone else that work with patrimonial institution directly, maybe Georgios also, or Mario Valerio, of course, with the National Archives of France. What are the experience of this collaboration between the academic world and patrimonial institutions?
Isabel, very short one is our experiences so far is that you have to be very cautious because what we did in Utrecht is we decided not to host the data any longer at the university, but to move the hosting to the Utrecht archive. And that was a brilliant move because in that way we showed we are not as a university, kind of pushing this whole time machine idea onto the municipality of Utrecht.
Okay, interesting. But in any case, you have a good experience. It has been an experience of, yeah. And also, Georgios, for your archaeological development concerning these specific parts of your research, it was a good experience also. Okay.
Yeah, it was a great experience with the Municipal Museum because it was, of course, due to the particularities of the case of Nicosia being a divided city, to be able to reunify the city and all its monuments in a visualization that would reconstruct the whole of the city in its totality was, of course, a very catchy and interesting topic for everyone here. So yeah, the Municipal Museum was very supportive, and this is why they included it in their permanent collection for all the visitors to be able to use it as an introduction to their learning of the history of the city. However, my experience, again, in the context of the sustainability aspect of our discussion today, is that such museums cannot really provide all the necessary funding for the resources for the development of this kind of visualization. So you need to either have your own funding or to combine fundings from different activities, because unfortunately, as everybody knows, these are very resourceful processes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a proof that more in this sector, potentially we need a sort of bridge with the companies, with the private sector, right? So for shift from an academic development and environment in which we are patrimony institution involved, but then we need to bootstrap for a professional web access or something more, and this it's the occasion for including in the discussion, the development, some private actors. Two reasons, but I cannot see them. Maybe Ferdinand, and then Ilaria. Of course, we can close. Maybe less remarks with Ferdinand.
Yeah. Wanted to add that we are working in Germany mainly with the libraries. And we experienced that you cannot come with an idea, but you already have to have something implemented, or you have something that you can show to them. And then they get fixed to the idea, they like the idea, and then it gets possible to get into these institutions. And also what we experienced, we can set up, for example, our software in these institutions, but then we're having the same problems as Georgios already said. We set up a state there, a fixed state from a point in time, and then they would need a developer to further develop the application and add something to the application, and that mostly lacks for funding. So they don't have the funding to have a developer only for this kind of application, because they're having so many other things to do in these libraries.
Yeah, right. Okay, many thanks to all of you. So I look forward to seeing you again in the discussion in the RFCs on 3D and 4D, because we need to join the efforts. And okay, so we will leave. Caroline, I know that there's the General Assembly at 30. We'll leave and this discussion, and thanks again. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much to our speakers.